Welcome to the end of day review for Tuesday, the 23rd of January 2024. Today is a bit of an early end of day review because New York for me was quite quiet. So I decided to just do the end of day review a bit earlier, and then we can pretty much close off today and get ready for tomorrow. In terms of the economic calendar, like I said in my previous outlooks, there is no red folder news events to concern ourselves about. However, looking forward to tomorrow, there is a lot of red folder news both for the British pound and the USD. Having said that, I'll move quickly onto the daily chart. What we can see here is that there are no daily consecutive candles to sway our daily bias in one direction or the other. So for the purposes of establishing market direction, what we can see is on the daily we have confirmed bullish market structure. However, we do have this wick right here, and what that wick is on the 4 hour is actually a body break, suggesting that a potential change in market structure is on the horizon. But like I've been saying, we essentially operating under uncertain terms because this chalk can either be a liquidity grab to then fuel the move essentially to the upside towards this ERL, or alternatively we could be generating a new market structure leg by putting in a new lower low. Once we have this break of structure, then we in a confirmed state and we can trade a bit more freely and fluently, that is. So unpacking the recent order flow on the 4 hour, having said that we're operating in this uncertain scenario, what we can see is following the substructure in the order flow, we can see that we have created this 4 hour previously confirmed pro trend leg. Why I say previously confirmed is because the previously confirmed trend was bullish, and whilst we haven't reacted to any 4HOB from an order flow perspective, we can clearly see that the primary leg has been generated as a result. Given this, it makes a lot of sense to to establish and validate this 4H primary leg, and as a result we essentially have two 4H OBs to consider, one being the protrend unconfirmed. Protrend unconfirmed because we don't yet have a break of structure to validate the bearish market structure, so protrend remains unconfirmed. There are two 4H OBs to consider trading from, the first being this protrend unconfirmed OB, and then obviously the primary OBs, which I've marked out right here. Moving on to unpacking today's price action, essentially what had happened is this morning during Asia, in the current day we took out this substructure, and then now in New York we took out this substructure. Thus two substructure targets for the day have been taken out, which essentially means that longs and shorts are invalidated for today. Perhaps to touch on the long aspect, because the current day took out the substructure that was validated yesterday, we essentially don't have reasons for continued longs, and it's more than likely that a short will prevail. Given that the short has prevailed by taking out its own for its substructure, there's thus no further reason to consider shorting further for today, and we essentially wait for tomorrow. Hence why I said my New York session ended quite early today. Moving on to the 5 minute, there's a couple of aspects to highlight. The first being obviously we're no longer looking for longs, but that doesn't mean that the technical analysis won't indicate where longs may be setting up. For example, once we come into this 4HOB, there's reason to trade long, and should we get a primary leg such as this, then directly trading from any short POIs are invalid, and we need to revalidate that secondary leg, whilst also ensuring that we have IRL in this new leg that developed, to ensure that we're not trading against any 4H OBs. Given the uncertainty, like I highlighted in the New York outlook, trading against 4H OBs are not valid unless we have new legs with new IRL to suggest or support why it makes sense to trade deeper into this. So perhaps starting off with the Frankfurt and London session, what we can see is that after we reacted to these 4HOBs, we had this primary leg develop as a result of the reaction to the 4H proton unconfirmed OBs, and from which point we could consider shorts. However, per my trade plan, um, I don't take short positions above previous high of the days unless the POI aligns roughly with the previous high of the day, such as this. Then I'd be happy to take a trade from here. However, for today specifically, um, we don't actually have a valid S&D flip or valid POI per my requirements that fit here, and in addition we're reacting to a 4HOB which is a barrier and invalidates shorting against the 4HOB. So at this point, once we reacted to the shorts were invalid, and then for this POI, although really nice and it made a lot of sense, like I said, it was above the previous high of the day and required that price had to come into a POI that's situated well above this high of the day. Um, then the other thing to note is, as you can see, whilst we reacted to this 4HOB, we had sufficient IRL, with this being approximately the last IRL point prior to the 4HOB, so we could easily get a 1 to 3. Unfortunately, like I said, the previous high of the day was below where the POI entry point was, so it wasn't valid per my trade and I avoided it. Just to highlight the reason why I don't like taking these trades, because oftentimes what happens is price creates this POI above the previous high of the day, and then price reacts to something and actually just uses all of this as liquidity to fuel the move up. The previous high of the day is also the fact that we're above the previous high of the day is potentially a suggestion that the daily may continue the momentum and print another bullish candle, in which case you'll get caught on the wrong side of the market. Then moving into the moving on to the New York session. Essentially, we had to wait for the New York range to be liquidated before we could consider any further long positions. Whilst waiting for that, obviously our substructure target was taken out, and yeah, there just wasn't any reason to consider any longs. Again, we took out the substructure high in the current day, which is a significant target, so longs were invalidated anyway. And then for the purposes of shorts, again, we needed the London range to be liquidated on one side, either this side or this side, although that is quite far away, so maybe a wick and then a return and potentially something to help us move to the downside. But again, there was many things to consider, one being the fact that we created the secondary leg, so we would have needed price to reach a POI as such and then generate a new secondary leg to the short side, having IRL to target, but at the time, because of how the day has formed, you have your high of the day here, which means, and your low of the day here, which means your FOB has to be anchored, and if your POI is around here, it's probably not presenting a good enough risk reward given that your target is here, unless you're willing to hold it, but even then it doesn't make sense because your target and your break-even point are the same. So if price doesn't come here, it's not ideal, and then obviously holding on to the position to get the 1 to 3 may work out in your favor. Not necessarily, because you'd essentially need your 80 pips, 75 to 80, which is stretching it given the scenario. So honestly, not great risk reward, and probably wasn't worth putting capital on the table. So that was pretty much the end of day review for today. No solid trades per my trading plan, but don't get me wrong, there were opportunities. This actually worked out quite nicely, and if you held all the way, it's a 9-hour trade, which is pretty fantastic. But also you have to take into account that if it's not in your trading plan edge, then taking this trade simply means you're not disciplined, and it makes it exponentially harder to be disciplined in following your trade plan, because when trades like these sway your opinion about your trade plan, then what ultimately happens is you'll reach a point where you don't know if you have an edge anymore, and that is incredibly tough on your emotions. So stay the course and yeah, just keep chipping away every single day. Other than that, have a good day, and we'll chat again tomorrow for the London Outlook.